The week hits. Exactly. Good afternoon and welcome to Gateway Rotary Club. All right, Jody, you guys the pledge.
Thank you. Please join me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. And with an inspiration today, Luke's.
Hey, I just got a little piece from Thich Nhat Hanh, who some of you know as one of the people that I go to quite often for inspiration. This comes just from his website. He says, "A tiny bud of a smile on your lips nourishes awareness and calms you miraculously. It returns you to the peace that you had lost." I'm sure some other kinds of buds would do that also. The bud of a smile, try it. Since I read it, I've been trying it, things going bad and just putting a little bit of a smile on makes a big difference.
Thank you. All right. Visiting Rotarians. I know we have a couple in the room. I don't see anybody online, but I know we've got some guests. Janie, I know you've got some folks you might want to introduce.
My boss actually, Patsy Smallin, she's the owner of KFI, and she's a Rotarian. And King Street Kelly, who's our VP of digital strategy, also my boss, and good things about the.
Of course. Welcome back. Welcome to Patsy and Kingsley. All right, and then I think I see, Deb, we'll get to you in a second. I think I see Jim Green here. The Friday Club. Welcome, Jim. Welcome to Zara Dar. Zara Dar, a good number. Those of you on Zoom, anybody else? I know Brenda has her. Echoing again. Okay, I think I did it. I think you should do it. Okay. Jim. Yep.
Yeah.
Brenda, I know you have a guest with you. Welcome, Jamie.
She's become a Rotarian.
Keep coming and you might be. All right, John.
I've known this guy a long time and you're gonna hear from him soon and a better introduction than I'm giving, but this is Mike Amaranthus.
Welcome to Mike Amaranthus, who will be our speaker very shortly. All right, anyone else? Okay, well, welcome to all of our guests. Announcements, I think we only have one. Beth, do you want to make one or?
The social next week on Thursday, on the 30th, is at OPPA. It's the Oregon Port Authority, something that sounds like that. But it's a pizza place and we have a room in the back and it will fit 25. So if there's any overload or anything, we'll just have to deal with that when the time comes. But it will start at 5:30. But if you want to get there early for fireside, somebody will be there at 5 too. Okay.
Is there a sign up sheet?
We could do one. Do I send one out? I don't know. How many people are planning on coming?
Next Thursday. Yeah, next Thursday, the 30th.
Maybe I'll send one out.
All right, we'll send one out via
Okay.
email so we can get a head count. Decide if we're gonna have too many. Next week is also our district governor will be visiting for our program, and we're going to extend an invitation to her to attend the social. Not sure yet if she'll be able to stay and attend, but we'll see. Okay, are there any other announcements that I might have missed? All right, well, we're going to be able to get right to our program, so I'm going to ask Dawn to come up and introduce me.
All right. I
there's so much that I could say about Mike, but I am going to read a bit as an introduction. Dr. Mike Amaranthus, who has a PhD in mycology, and for those of you who may not know what that is, it's a branch of biology concerned with the study of fungi. As a matter of fact, Dr. Mike is notable in his field of expertise, and he even has fungi like truffles and mushroom species he discovered and are named after him. How many other people in here can say the same thing? And he is a fun guy. Okay.
Well, I like
As-
that.
Well, we know it to be true. As background, Mike worked for 20 years in Southern Oregon, where he was a soil researcher for the USDA. He received actually the USDA's highest honors award for scientific achievement after his 20 years of contributions as a USDA research scientist. And he authored and co-authored over 100 scientific papers. Again, how many people can say that? Apparently not many. Mike and Eileen Amaranthus founded the company, Mycorrhizal Applications, here in Grants Pass. It's a biotechnology company focusing on growing and using mycorrhizal fungi to fungi. Is it fungi? Fungi. So sorry. All right, I'm saying it with as much action as I can. All right, to increase food production using fewer chemical fertilizers and pesticides. And I think this is important for us as Rotarians to appreciate, because the environment is our newest and most, well, a very important focus. So what Mike and Eileen have done is really all about the environment. They did sell their company in 2015, but they still are advocates for caring for the land and learning from the natural world. A walk in the woods with Mike, I've been lucky to do this while mushroom hunting, is literally an exciting exercise in fungus discovery. And Mike, as I said,
I'm gonna go get my
the word
wallet
fungus.
so I can pay for this printing.
But Mike's expertise doesn't stop there in his field of study. He's also an inspiration through his life as a mentor to University of Oregon athletes. He's supportive of leadership roles for student athletes in local sports, and he should be joining our Rotary. And he's a counselor in the Cancer Action Network. He is also interested in helping to teach children about where your food comes from. And he wrote a wonderful book, a children's book about that. And most recently, he's written another book, and you'll learn a little bit about it, called Fry, Thrive, or Die. But it is the story about the most common mushrooms we might find in the Pacific Northwest and how they make a difference in our lives. So with that, I could go on and on and on. Dr. Mike Amaranthus.
I hope I can live up to that. In fact, I almost feel like I just died. Someone just read my eulogy or something. So I came here in 1977. I was, I think the woolly mammoths were still roaming the Rogue Valley. We realized them. But my first job was, I was a soil scientist, and my first job was working in growing these trees. We were growing 100 million trees, because back then they were still clear cutting to plant trees out in the forest. You may remember those days. So we're growing these baby trees in these nurseries, more like agricultural products. And we noticed that a lot of the trees were stunted and they had like purple needles. And so we looked at the needles, and it turned out these trees were phosphorus deficient. So we looked at the soil, and for some reason the soils had super high levels of phosphorus, but the trees were phosphorus deficient. So it seemed very strange. So we asked all the experts, and the experts said, well, just add more fertilizer, which we did, and it didn't really work. And then it was add soluble fertilizer, which we started pouring on these trees. And the trees were like little heroin addicts. They stopped growing roots because they were getting their daily infusion of this liquid fertilizer. So they looked a little better, but then we had all kinds of disease problems in the nursery, and we're using all kinds of fungicides and pesticides because of all the fertilizer we were pouring on things. So it was this treadmill of bad management practices. And the bottom line was the trees, once they left the nursery,
They got planted up in these godforsaken rocky hills. They weren't surviving. So, we had less than 50% survival. So someone mentioned, we talked to every expert we knew of, and someone said, well, you should talk to Jim Trappy. He's a kooky old professor at Oregon State University. And I called him up. Jim's 94. He's still publishing papers. And this was way back in 79. And he goes, oh yeah, just, I know what the problem is. You go out in the forest and you collect these certain kinds of mushrooms and truffles and puffballs, and you put it in a blender and mix it with water, spray it over the trees, and they'll grow fine. And I thought, who is this guy? Who? But we were desperate, so we went out and did it. And it worked. The trees grew beautiful root systems. Survival of these trees went from less than 50% to 90%. And I was just completely hooked on this thing I knew absolutely nothing about. So when Jim got a National Science Foundation grant to study reforestation and the use of these fungi, I was all in, became his PhD student. So that's kind of how I got involved. Anyway, first slide. I've been hooked ever since. So I wrote a book called Try, Thrive, or Die. And it's a pocket guide to common edible. The try is for the edible ones. The thrive is for the medicinal ones, and the die is for the obviously the ones that can kill them. So, that's what the book's about. A lot of the guides are really old. David Aurora's book, which is excellent, All the Rain Promises More, is like 35 years old. A lot of things have changed. Our knowledge has changed. The names have changed. What's once considered edible now we know is poisonous. We need to eat enough of them. So there's a lot of new information out there that I wanted to share. And that was the theory behind the book. Go ahead. It's got a lot of local characters in it, a lot of local stories. It covers the whole Western United States. But it does cover some of the best edibles and the most poisonous mushrooms that we have here in the West. Go ahead. So mushrooms have certain characteristics. I'm not going to get technical with you on the details, but there's a cap, there's a stalk, there's an attachment at the base, how it comes out of the soil, can have a cup, and those with the vulva are very dangerous because they're in the Amanita group, but how the gills attach or don't attach to the stalk is very key. So John is here. He's we talked about this, I don't know, about a year ago, and he had this great quote. He goes, and John's been hunting mushrooms for 50 years, maybe even longer. But anyway, he said to me we were at a little dinner thing together, and he said, if you can tell a black and white cat from a skunk, you can learn to identify mushrooms. And then he goes, well, and even if you can tell a Pomeranian from a red fox, you can learn to tell mushrooms. So next slide. If you realize that on the left there are two mushrooms and on the right is a dog dressed like a mushroom, you can learn to be a mushroom expert. If I can do it, anybody can do it. Go ahead. So mushrooms have obviously, different characteristics in terms of their size and their color and their structure and their texture, but they also have a fragrance. And they also have fruiting habitat or period. They like the woods or lawns, or they like bark, or they like the fall, or they like the spring, or they get fruit in the winter. So that's all covered in the book. I also try and identify for all the good edible ones, dangerous lookalikes that could cause people trouble over time, and then how to store them. I made chanterelle soup yesterday from collections last fall and the year before. So if you know how to store and prepare these things, you can eat mushrooms year round. Morels, I have dried morels that I eat year round from last year's spring fruiting. So if you know how to store them or prepare them, the book covers all that, because you just don't want because they're more like fish. They're not more than less like vegetables. They last in your refrigerator for, a week. So, it's nice to have mushrooms year round. Go ahead. So I got interested in mushrooms as medicine after a cancer diagnosis 12 years ago. And I read a lot about it. And there's a lot more that's come out in the last 10 years. And I've literally reviewed over 100 scientific papers on various mushrooms that are in the book. and what they're actually doing to your body to make your bodies healthier. And there's a lot of things in terms of, boosting the immune system, anti-tumor, T cell production. There's a lot of qualities of mushrooms that really increase your body's own defense system against certain kinds of ailments. So it's a real opportunity. If you go to this mushroomreferences.com, they have the whole scientific papers, which is really nice. Instead of reading a popular magazine, you can actually look at the data, what is real, because there's so much hype in the world right now about all kinds of natural products. It's nice to have the real data from the real scientific studies. Go ahead. Obviously some mushrooms are like deadly poisonous. And this is Amanita ocreata. It's the angel of death. And it's on the left there. It's white. It comes out of a bulb, that's the thing. The gills don't attach to the stem. And it's the one that they used to poison Emperor Claudius back in 2000 years ago. And they actually got the Holy Roman Empire, Charles IV emperor too, with the same mushroom. So it's very poisonous. Next slide. And it occurs in our area, the destroying angel. We have captions up top, but that's okay. Go ahead. That's okay. Next slide.
Well, okay.
This is, yeah, if anybody has questions or comments.
Did I leave? I want to be sure I get out.
This is another really poisonous mushroom. This is, and one of the reasons I wrote the book is that 30 years ago, this mushroom didn't occur in our region. This is from Lithia Park, and this is the death count. And what's happened is these are mycorrhizal. They live on the roots of vegetation, a lot of these mushrooms. And like, as people have imported like non-native plants, the mushrooms have come in with that. And this is all over Lithia Park. It's probably the most common mushroom in Lithia Park. And it's one mushroom can kill 5 people. So you got to be really careful. A lot of the landscape mushrooms are not native to our area, but they've invaded. This one's come from Europe, and it's all over the world now. This is your classic mushroom. It's called the fly agaric. And it's called the fly agaric because it's used in Siberia. They put some of these mushrooms, very common in Siberia, in the taiga forests. And they put it in milk and they put it on the windowsill, and the flies fly in, they gobble up the milk, and it's got the solution of the ammonite in there, and they get intoxicated or die. So it's a way to keep the flies out of the house. But it's got a long history as an intoxicant. It's used by the Siberian people, the reindeer hunters, mostly the northern climates, as an intoxicant. Go ahead.
Mike,
Yes.
I want to share a story about that
Sure.
red cap mushroom.
Yeah.
I read that in some primitive societies, the shaman would eat the mushroom. They're hallucinogenic in some ways. And the shaman would eat the mushroom, and the tribal members would drink his urine. And I could understand if your uncle did that, and grandpa did that, and your brother did that. Who was the first guy?
Well, the thing about the reindeer is the reindeer do that. And they actually have video of that. And they have video of people using these for ceremonial purposes in Russia and Finland. It's mostly the nomadic reindeer hunters, and they do it because they're looking for an intoxicant. But there's pretty good historical evidence that the berserkers, which were the Vikings that, they're so vicious and crazy, that they would drink a thing of Amanita muscaria tea before they would make them fearless and crazy. And there's also this idea of the reason Santa's up there is that a lot of the Christmas traditions, if you think about it, you got Santa, red Santa with the white buttons, you got flying reindeer, you've got gifts at the base of trees, the mycorrhizal, where they occur around the base of trees. So a lot of the Christmas traditions, the laughing ho 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 Santa, because they still have shamans in Siberia that practice, eating this mushroom and visiting people. You know, so you can't die from this, but some people get really upset, gastric kinds of things, but it does intoxicate you. Okay. Well, we want to talk about some of the good edible ones in our area. This is the Pacific yellow chanterelle, the golden chanterelle, very common in our area, Southern Cascades. Next one. That's a good one. That's a fall fruiter. Next one. There's a white chanterelle that occurs just a little higher up in the mountains. This other one occurs maybe a week later from the Pacific gold chanterelle. It's really meaty. It's delicious to eat. We have a tiny little coastal chanterelle. It's called yellowfoot, and has a hollow stem, and you can need a lot more mushrooms to make a meal out of them, but they're also very good to eat. And then in the book, we always cover the dangerous lookalikes. And this is Terminellus leucosus. So it's the fall chanterelle, the woolly chanterelle. And it looks quite a bit like a chanterelle. It's got folds underneath the cap, but it's got the cap and the stem are two different colors. The stem is generally white, and it's got a scaly cap that the chanterelle doesn't have. But it's always good if you're not experienced to go out with someone that's experienced, because these occur right where the chanterelles grow, and so you don't get the wrong shrooms. And then some mushrooms look like nefarious; they look evil, but they're really good to eat. This one is Craterellus, and it's the black trumpet or the horn of plenty. And these are delicious, and they occur under madrone. They're really hard to find, but they fruit all winter long under madrone leaves. And sometimes Louis at the growers market has these for sale. If you ever see them, pick them up because they're delicious. The one you probably know most about are morels. We just entered the morel season yesterday at Foots Creek. They start finding some morels finally, because the season's been delayed. And there's another mushroom morel hunting time in the Cascades that lasts all of May and into the first week of June at higher elevations. So they tend to like people. They like disturbance. They like fires. They like thinning. They like roads. They've blossomed with human activity. So they're very good. Some are like culture specific. This is one that occurs in our area as well. It's called the matsutake, and it smells like cinnamon. And the Asian cultures love this. It's very popular in Japan. Certain holidays you have to have matsutake, like you have to have turkey on Thanksgiving. So it drives the price way up. There's very few produced in Japan anymore because the red pine is in decline and it lives off the roots of red pine. So they import them from Chemolt, from the Central Oregon Cascades, and they get it quite a bit from China. So they're delicious. American matsutake. And again, Japanese Americans, this is the Ballinger, Eric Ballinger. He remembers growing up, his grandparents, and his story is in the book about how we go out with his grandparents from Japan, and they picked matsutake on the backside of Mount Hood, and how important it was to his family and to their culture. There's indicator plants for a lot of mushrooms, and the indicator plant for matsutake is this candy cane mushroom. If you ever see this out in the woods, it's growing in the mycelium of matsutake. So be looking around because there's likely to be a matsutake in the area. You've all seen this one, the shaggy mane, occurs along roadsides. It's delicious, but you have to eat it like very promptly after you collect it because it deliquesces, it turns to ink. And Caprinus, this group of fungi, was like the original source of ink because it turns to ink. And in fact, the Constitution was signed with ink from shaggy mane. So yeah, it's a good. The other thing too is that, and these are all in the books, but there's an allergy to alcohol with the shaggy mane. So my suggestion is to eat it for breakfast. Next slide.
Yeah, hang on a second.
Went down.
My cursor's something going on with my cursor here.
We've talked about shaggy mane. Well, anyway, this is the shaggy parasol. It's very common in our area. It's delicious, very good, but again, it has a dangerous lookalike. Next one, this occurs a lot in people's lawns. The next one is the green spored parasol. You can see like the green staining underneath the gills. And this is the third most mushroom that causes mushroom poisonings in the United States. And it's because it's always around people's homes and stuff. And it looks like the shaggy parasol, but to be avoided. There's this idea of taking spore prints where you take the cap off and you put the cap of the mushroom on a white piece of paper or a black piece of paper, put a cup or a bowl over the top. And within hours, you get the color of the spores. And in the book, we talk about taking spore prints. And this one is it's the only one I've ever seen that has green spore print, which is really pretty, but it's an indication that it's poisonous. This is a really safe group. These are called the hedgehogs. They have teeth, not gills underneath. They taste like chanterelles, very nutty, and kind of an almond apricot taste to them. They're delicious, but you can't confuse these with anything else. Italian Americans, this is, John started to clap. Porcinis, Boletus edulis, a lot of people don't realize that we have them here. They're very valued by Southern Europeans. If you ever go to Europe, every menu's got porcini on it. And usually 5 or 6 different porcini dishes. That's also very nutty. One mushroom can feed 12 people and they get huge. And so they're very good. We have a spring fruiting and a fall fruiting. The spring fruiting nobody really even knew about until like 10 years ago, and we started finding them up in the high Cascades.
Spring King.
The Spring King, it's Boletus rexbaris, and the type collection for that new species came from our cabin up at the Howard Prairie Lake. So, but you want to avoid these the red poured ones or the ones that stain blue, because these are poisonous. And this is Boletus centanus, and it will definitely make you sick. You wish you never were born. And you think you're gonna, anyway, she's not very happy because you think you're gonna get a porcini and you end up, because you just see this bump in the woods and this big bump, and then you pick it and it stains blue and you think, dang it, because they occur like in the same places at the same time. So this is the gold caps, the Psilocybe cubensis. And in Oregon, there are, it's legal to consume this for therapeutic processes. So PTSD, the group that's really pushing for this are veterans associations, because it's been shown effective in several studies now for PTSD. They're using it for anxiety, depression, mental health issues. It's kind of the EPA is designated as a breakthrough drug. And so it's, it's getting quite a lot of play. There's a lot of research ongoing now. So the Oregon Health, it's not like, marijuana where you go down and, buy some and take it home. This is only for therapeutic purposes, licensed people that have gone through the training. It's taken on site. You don't leave the site until it's all out of your system. It's very, very well documented, et cetera. So anyway, it's happening. Several other states are considering this as well. But what people don't realize is that we have all of these natural occurring psilocybe species. The old guides have like 3 species in Western North America, and there's 18. We've learned a lot about which ones of these things have psilocybin in them. So this is the Liberty cap for you old hippies. You may remember going to the coast in the old days and digging through the pastures on the coast. Keep going. This is one that's just recent to our area. This is the wavy cap, and this one's really potent. And this likes landscape bark. So I found them in town and people's bark. People don't know they're there. Wavy cap, very potent. This is Psilocybe stuntii. And again, they put a bunch of bark down in this nursery, and there was literally hundreds of thousands of these things fruiting in the nursery, and it's unbeknownst to people. Keep going. But the problem with that nursery is that we found these mixed in there. This is the deadly Galerina, the death bell, and it has the same ingredients, toxic ingredients, as those deadly Amanitas. So this one's very deadly. it can occur within inches of some of the hallucinogenic ones. So people just out there not carefully looking at their mushrooms. You want to basically avoid little brown mushrooms if you can, because they're very tough to distinguish and potentially dangerous. Does anybody know this one? This is the honey mushroom. And it's Oregon's claim to fame. Go ahead to the next slide, because it's the world's oldest and largest organism. This thing is huge. If it was a blue whale, you would have known about it, but because it's a mushroom, nobody really cares. But it's in Eastern Oregon. Go ahead, next slide. I think it's
in my yard
yeah, it's everywhere. It's all through town.
How big is you?
and they're good.
It's I can tell you, it's 1,500 acre size. The single organism, 1,500 acres. It's the mycelium.
I thought you meant.
And it's old, it's like 5,000 years old. So it's a single genetic organism. Yeah, the guys, they wrote several papers on this, and what they did was they did DNA testing to say that it was one organism. So it's called PCR work. So you just take samples and it was all the same organism. So they think it's been there for 5,000 years based on that. 5,000 years? I don't know. That's a good question. Yeah, maybe at the rate it's growing or something, that it's hard to say. But I think it also by looking at the RNA, if you look at the RNA, you can see how old something is by the RNA thing. So they probably use that. This is my granddaughter. But this one is a fascinating fungus called the oyster mushroom. You get it Fred Meyer's, Safeway, Cartwright's. It's really healthy for you. It's really good for you. Delicious. Louis sells them down at the growers market. But it's not only a good edible and a healthy mushroom, it's got all kinds of other characteristics. Go to the next slide. It's used to clean up oil spills. This is like one of the primary ways they clean up petroleum spills, other toxic spills, because it can degrade anything. It produces tremendous amounts of enzymes that can, there's nothing that can't degrade. They actually trained one strain to decompose cigarette butts, which turned out to be almost impossible to degrade. So you can see the mycelium going through the cigarette butts. I have a strain and I have a little lab in my house, and I have some molds. And so I took just some landscape bark in my yard and I sterilized it, inoculated it, and put it in a mold, and I grew like little toys for my grandkids. And they're super light and they're super strong. I grew this maybe 5 years ago, and it's still as strong as the day I grew it. And it's going to be a future alternative to styrofoam, which is a terrible thing for the environment because it never decomposes, where this will eventually decompose. So Dell Computer just ordered 1 million pieces to pack their computers with styrofoam made from mushroom mycelium. The guy on the left is Paul Stamets, kind of a mushroom legend. If you've ever seen like Fantastic Fungi, he's got like 2 or 3 Netflix programs, and he's done a bunch of TED Talks, and he's got millions of followers. But he's a Northwest guy. He's been around for a long time. He's big on lion's mane that he's holding right there. I've got maitake, which is hand of the wood. But there's a lot of research going on. The lion's mane, some people, I'm sure some people in the room are taking lion's mane supplements, but it tends to stimulate synapses in your brain. John was just talking about, shopping for it, and it allows you more cognitive response to things and more clarity of the brain. So it's quite a bit of data on that now.
Yeah.
It's a good thing. So we have some lion's mane that fruits here, but more common to us is the bear's head. And it occurs in the same spot, almost the same day every year. So you go to this log out in the woods, it's like Happy Bear's Head Day, because it's always there on that day. So it's delicious to eat too, and it can't be confused with anything poisonous. Go ahead. This is the cauliflower mushroom. That's Louis from the growers market. These things can get 40, 50 pounds. They're huge and they're delicious. And I don't, people can't appreciate how good these things are. And this will last somebody a year once you dry it and store it. Hen of the Woods, another delicious one that's underutilized. Go ahead. Turkey tail. You've seen this in your yard, right? It grows on oak logs. Everybody's got this. I bet you half the people in this room have turkey tail growing in your yard. Turns out it's a great medicinal mushroom, especially for breast cancer. They extract PSK from this thing, and it's the #1 breast cancer treatment in China and Japan is PSK from this mushroom. And there's probably a dozen new scientific papers where it's used as alternative to chemotherapy. And, you know, it's a fantastic thing. And about 50% of the new medicines are derived from fungi. So there's a lot of people looking at this. There's a lot of people that are working with fungi right now. So this is Ganoderma. You've seen this out in the woods too. It's called artist conch. And they're not actually writing on the back side. When you see it like at a gift shop, they're not actually writing on it. It's actually the staining. When you touch the pores underneath it with anything solid, it makes that beautiful writing on there. So they're not writing on it, it's artist conch, and it stains that color. And it's a very important medicinal mushroom as well. This ugly thing is called chaga, and it's on Birch. This is on like 4th Street. It looks like charcoal, but it's used by the Siberians. It's a powerful anti-cancer tonic used as teas, and it's delightful tea. Louis sells it down there. It's got kind of a vanilla-like taste to it, but it's a nice mushroom tea. I use it all the time. So truffles, black truffles. I threw this in here and we're wrapping it up because I know people have things to do, but we have probably 150 truffle species in the Northwest. Only a few are edible, but this black truffle, this is the French black truffle, is one of the world's most expensive foods. The Italian white truffle is $1,500 to $2,500 a pound. This one is $500 to $1,500 a pound. And the French love it. Again, certain cultures like certain kinds of mushroom products, and the French love this. Oh, go back one. Yeah, so how you do it is you take the spores, which are the seeds of the truffle, and you water them into trees in a nursery. The mycorrhiza form on the roots, and then you outplant them. Wait 70 years. You got to do all kinds of things. It's a long time. It's a really risky proposition, let me tell you. But it can work. There's that. You ever look at that big orchard as you go in Sunny Valley there? That's a truffle orchard. There's several in Roseburg area. There's quite a few in Cottage Grove, Eugene. Some are producing a few truffles, but most of them have been pretty disappointing because you have to really test the soil every year and do all kinds of amendments. But this is a friend of ours in Australia, and I was involved with this from the very beginning. In Manjimup, which is south of Perth, we did this, and it was the first truffles to be produced in the Southern Hemisphere. And the reason is because there are no fresh truffles at that time of year, because it's opposite to the Northern Hemisphere climatically. So this little truffle plantation produced 14,000 pounds of truffles last year. Yeah, it's on 20 acres, and it's never been duplicated. We can't really figure out why it worked, but we know it worked there. So anyway, but there are a couple truffles in Oregon, and Louis has these sometimes down there, the Oregon white truffle, and they have a white truffle celebration in Eugene. They have a big dinner and stuff. So we have a spring and fall white truffle, and they're delicious. You can get them fresh. Yeah. So anyway, I mean, mushrooms wasn't that cool to be doing, hanging around and studying mushrooms when I started, but it's really gotten a lot of traction. There's it's interesting, I can be used for medicine, for food, construction material. It's really kind of a natural alternative to some of the petroleum products that we've been using. So it's been an interesting ride. Yeah, next one. And I met a lot of interesting people. And these guys are local, but it's been interesting, and it's always an adventure. And go ahead to the next slide. What's nice is that you get out and you look. And if, when in doubt, throw it out. So if you're not sure the mushroom is what you think it is, just get rid of it. But if there are some that you can be absolutely sure of in pretty short order. So when in doubt, throw it out, but go for a walk in the woods. I think we're all kind of hunters gatherers at our roots. And I think that brings a lot of joy when you can pick your dinner out of a natural environment and take it home that day and cook it, or save it for a rainy day and cook it then. And I think it's a lot more gratifying than checking your cell phone every minute. So I've got this book. It's called Fry, Thrive or Die. It's out on Amazon. Just came out like a few days ago. It's on Amazon, Barnes and Noble, Apple Books. We're going to sell it. I get the actual physical copies of the book next week. They'll be at Oregon Books. Ed from Redwood Nursery is going to have it. I think REI has jumped aboard, so it'll be at REI in Medford, or all the REIs for all I know. But so it's going to get around. And then for you have kids or grandkids, this is the book that Dawn alluded to. It's called Mycorrhiza, and it's all the things that the living earth does for us. I mean, a lot of kids don't realize that, Mother Earth produces everything that you're doing. Where does their food come from? So it talks a lot about that. It's Linda Gray illustrated it. She did a great job. Anyway, it's pretty entertaining and talks about all that. So that's at Oregon Books too, and a few other places in town. So thank you. Any questions about any of this or comments? Yes.
All of the ads that I'm getting for coffee substitutes, mushroom days, suggestions on any of those that seem to be better than others?
Yeah, I mean, well, the natural ones are cordyceps for the morning, because you want that, so lion's mane and cordyceps are the two mushrooms that you want in that, because they give you energy. They're energized. They have a natural kind of steroid in them. So I've done it a couple times. I prefer coffee, but it's probably a lot better for you, or maybe, I don't know. I mean, caffeine's pretty good for you too, I think. Moderation, yes.
So if you're using the product that, I remember many years ago, you did a presentation for the Wednesday Rotary, Mary Corbullet brought you, she had this size of tomato, and then she had your size of tomato. So if we use the mycorrhizal product in the soil, do we also need to use fertilizer from Ed at Redwood Nursery?
Well, you can use the data indicates you can use 30 to 50% less fertilizer. So if you can cut back on your fertilizer. If you're growing just a small plant, you probably don't need any fertilizer. But if you're a farmer, agricultural production, you cut way back. Yeah, and probably the mycorrhiza will do just fine. Yes. Yes.
Or else you're going to close mushrooms that you cannot, there's not another substitute that is deadly, right?
Well, it depends on your level of expertise. I used to think that, and then you go out with some beginners, and there's a Gyrometra esculenta, which is the brain one, looks like a brain. And for some people, they confuse that with morels. So, with a little bit of experience and a good field guide, you shouldn't have any trouble. The thing you should always do is cook morels. You should cook all mushrooms, because they, morels probably have just a tiny bit of rocket fuel in them, really, monomethylhydrazine, and it cooks off very easily. That Gyrometra one, the brain one, has a large amount of it, and it could be lethal. So, but it looks just like a brain. A morel looks like a little honeycomb, pine cone. So you're pretty safe. Yes. Although in the book, though, I spent because people love morels, I spent a lot of time explaining the different types of morels, where and when they fruit, because everybody has their own theories. So I did a lot of research on that in the book, and so there's some entertaining stories about people's morel hunts, but a lot about, okay, what kind of morel is this, and where are you likely to find it and when? So, yes.
When I was planting vineyards in California years ago, my nurseryman said, when you plant these little grapevines, fish scraps, mycorrhiza. So we mycorrhiza. So my vineyards grew bigger, faster, produce better. So thank you for mycorrhizing.
Well, I think it's been around about 460 million years, so I can't take credit for it, but we definitely helped commercialize it. And that company is still, we sold the company, but they're selling products in 40 different countries. They're doing pretty good. So it's gratifying to know they're a great company too. So yes.
So I got a little shout out for your book. My wife got bought two books for our niece and nephew. We also then sent them a little rodeo mushroom and a bag of sawdust. Yeah.
Right, yeah.
I think those two little kids got a lot of mileage out of that. And I work out, yes.
Yeah, it's
Yes, for 7-year-old or 8-year-old.
yeah, because they have to spray it. They get a little sprayer, and so they have to humidify it every day. So the mycelium is always in a like on rice or sawdust or something, and it's just all mycelium. And then there's like a humidity tray or something to keep it moist and stuff. Kids love it. And again, they actually can see where okay, I can do something that's food. Yeah.
There's some people here, Jody's one of them, that have well fertilized pastures. But you have not mentioned the meadow mushroom.
I'm afraid because there's the meadow mushroom looks like this Agaricus californicus, which is the yellow staining. Their meadow mushrooms are delicious to eat, and for an experienced hunter, they should do that because they're white, which is like the Amaranthus, the deadly poisonous ones, and because the yellow one is that the californicus is the lose your part of the lose your lunch bunch, so you'll get sick. I mean, you got to go out with an experienced person if you're going to pick a white mushroom out in the middle of the meadow. I think better have some experience. Yes.
Dog, like you talked about Lithia Park, do dogs just not know not to eat these things?
Well, good question. I mean, people have sent me poop from all over the world that their animal is eating. I get bags of poop. I used to get a lot of bags of poop because little poo-poo has eaten something in the front yard and they collected the poop. And they want to know if the dog's going to die. So they mail it to me.
By the time you get it, the dog's dead.
Well, animals are, I don't know the answer exactly, but it's very few pet fatalities associated with mushrooms that I've ever heard of. I don't know of a single one, but I've had a lot of people send me bags of poop and wanting to know if Fifi is going to die or not. And I think that the dogs probably would avoid it, I would think, but anyway. Go ahead. So they use dogs for truffles because they're not sexually attractive like the pigs are. The truffle puts off a pheromone of a pig in heat. So the pigs are really aggressive when they're digging truffles. In fact, if you look at the truffle hunters in Europe, I've been to several truffle hunting competitions. And the old truffle hunters are missing fingers because the pig will actually bite off part of their fingers because it doesn't want to give up the truffle. So a lot of these guys are like, and all their digits. You could tell the guys that have been doing it for a while because they're missing parts of their things. Where the dog, just give the dog a treat. And the way they do it, and I don't want to belabor this too long because I know you guys need to leave, but the way they do the dogs, because I was working on that truffle plantation in Australia. So the dog doesn't really dig up the truffle. It's moving up and down the rows and it'll stop and it'll be really interested in the spot. So we would take like a washer with a little bit of flagging and we just throw the washer there to mark the spot where the dog was really interested. And then we wanted to move the dog because you have to cover a lot of ground. So we would do that and then we would come back to where all the washers were and get down on our hands and knees and smell the soil. And you can smell the truffle. It's kind of a garlicky, musty thing. You can actually smell it. And when you smell strong, you just take a little trowel and you pop it out. But the dogs are great. The dogs are trained. There's a Lakota breed that's trained exactly for truffle, for finding truffles. Lakotas. It's kind of a small poodle. thing, but that's the breed that's supposedly the best. But any dog can be used if they want to please their master, and you got a good trainer. Yes.
Little thing about the dogs, we lived out in Murphy 20 years ago, we had 2 dogs and they would dig something up and slide a little round ball out of the fluff. And I didn't know what it was, I thought it was a dog was dumb, and, you know, so I ignored it, pulled them away or whatever, then guys been moving it down, they dogs back away, then slowly up hearing the same dog, and they were digging up a couple.
Yeah, they're really common. Truffles are, we did a bunch of studies when I was with USDA, and then we actually found more biomass in truffles than mushrooms on a lot of sites. So you just don't see them because they're beneath the soil surface. They look like little potatoes. You guys have been a great audience. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. All right, I want to give folks a chance if they need to leave on time, they can. So I'll just let you know that next week, Amy Walsh, who is our district governor, will be down to visit and present to us next week. So that's the program next week. And then for the thought of the day, I have a change in the weather is sufficient to recreate the world and ourselves. That's from Marcel Proust. If you'd like to stay and share happy thoughts, you may, but if you have to leave, we understand, and we'll see you next week. Kelly, do you want to do? You want me to? Okay. For anybody who folks want to stay for happy bucks? All right, we'll stay.
Okay, well, first, first I want to tell you that yesterday was World Water Day, and I'm looking at you, Latifah. Yes, thank you for putting that awareness in our club's purview. And world water is a huge problem, and it's getting to be an American problem as well. So yes, there is a holiday that begins today. I'm not sure if it began last night or today, but that's Ramadan. And so this holiday is celebrated in the 9th month on the Islamic calendar. And so it is a holy month that involves fasting. And it's going to run from March 23rd to April 22nd, I believe. And Zara, who is, I'm honored to have as my girlfriend, but also is more aware than I am of some of the pillars of Islam, this being one of the pillars. Strong, did I say it correctly? For fasting. And it's the pillar that's practiced during Ramadan. But the thing I found interesting is the name stands from the Arabic root Aramad, which means scorching heat, which I thought was interesting. Start and end of Ramadan is lunar based, which I thought was also interesting because we're going to see that come up again with another holiday you're very familiar with, and that's Easter. So not following the Gregorian calendar. So what else? I think we need to talk happy bucks, sad bucks, crappy bucks, whatever kind of bucks you got. Okay, I have 5 happy bucks because Jim and I are going on another cruise in 29 days. And I'm going to be going to 4 different countries I've never been to. Colombia, Panama, Costa Rica, and Guatemala.
I'm jealous.
We're all jealous.
Well, I'm gonna get a happy buck for Don and I. We have a birthday on Sunday. We are other sisters and stuff. And I also wanted to get a happy buck for Dr. Mike, my daughter Megan, absolutely love flying.
All right.
I have so much happiness, so I've got some happy bucks I'm sharing. I have been living my best life. I've given 3 happy bucks because I've been on vacation for 3 out of the last 4 weeks. I went to an aviation international conference in Long Beach. I went to Puerto Vallarta. I went to Mazatlan. I went to Cabo San Lucas, and then I just spent the last week in Vegas. They're all glad to do them. Also, two more things, hosting comedy here, Friday and Saturday night, and for those of you interested, I will be, weather permitting, singing at the Tacoma Durham School fundraiser this Saturday. And that is my ultimate fear of singing in front of people. So, if you'd like to come out and see that. Happy, wonderful life right now.
All right, anybody else take that from you?
Well, I have a happy thought for Jamie. And she was, and Brenda were there at the Forks on, Tuesday, and, helped packed, 300 bags of food for county and city children for spring break. And, the little plus the numbers of people helping, and so really appreciate you being there. And I had to be well, it take 40 minutes, and I don't know how long it took.
Well, who do you call us?
I have 20 happy bucks. A few things. One is that it's 23rd of March, and people like this, like people down in Perth, I have about 12 hours of sunlight, just like we do. So it's the time of year that we are sharing light, and so I'm happy because the light is coming back to the earth. And this is that first week of spring. It brings the light and the sun back to us and happiness. Had a great time last week as a nanny in band, as nanny as you have to be when you're 14 and 12. But sometimes those are the special times, because there's nothing like 14-year-old who's bigger than you that gives you a big hug and said, I love him so much, Grandma. Anyway, and his baseball team is now 3-0, so lots of happiness.
I'll get 5 happy bucks for Kelly getting me started on Rotary, reading with the little kids. The little boy that I've been working with for a couple of months, 3rd grade and barely able to do the word. And he's really doing well. So that's really been a lot of fun and very rewarding. I just want to add to that, we just added another member to our group via Patty Toronto, retired teacher from California, who's a friend of Patty's. So our literacy group is growing, and we will be staying involved. So anybody that still wants to join, you always can.
I've got 5 healing bucks for our friend Tommy, who is up in Eugene right now, going through some very uncomfortable times of testing and that sort of thing. So keep her in your thoughts.
Well, I have 5 happy bucks. Today would have been my mother's birthday. I miss her every day. She had the most charming, sarcastic humor ever. I called her one day and I said, she answered the phone. I said, where's Dad? She says, well, he's at the grocery store. He said, what are you doing? She said, changing the locks. And she was that fast. Also, my nephew and his family will be moving here June 1st. I'm very excited. His the oldest daughter, she's like a superstar softball player, so I'm going to get her involved in the sports at Grants Pass High School. And I'm thrilled that my friend Dee Dee will be starting with the reading program. I'm very happy. Thank you all. Oh, by the way, I just got back from Mazatlan, but my hands faded.
Happy bucks.
Sue and I are gonna be in Spain for a month, I'll miss a few meetings. The Spaniards look out, I'm gonna be driving a stick in Spain.
Oh, we won't shoot. Okay, so I'm gonna get bragging rights here too. I'm gonna get off to Madagascar next month. For 2.5 weeks on a cruise. I'll let you know any penguins in Madagascar. Pretty got some vanilla beans.
20 happy bucks, 10 for my wonderful man in so many ways. And 10 for Zara, I'm so happy that you're in that club. You're wonderful. And happy Ramadan. Do I say happy Ramadan? Okay.
I've got some happy bucks for Jody here to call around. So a couple years ago, 2 years ago, her bank was being renovated and she went through an awful lot of trouble. Excuse me, I got a little cold. To get the cabinetry and the miscellaneous stuff from that bank renovation to Foundry Village. And probably 70% of it went in Foundry Village. Thank you very much. That was, 2 years ago, but I was able to use the last 20 or 30% of the cabinetry and stuff at my house in this apartment I'm building. But I want to say, I got a little gift for you, but I want to say that, bank cabinetry, your ladies tape more crap to the inside of bank cabinets. It was utterly amazing. Now, this is just tape we've been scraping off the inside of those cabinets. And this is the small ball, the big stuff went to the dumps in a dump truck. That's how much tape is in there. But anyway, thank you for going. So, no more Scotch tape. Okay, it's miserable crap. Scraping off the cabinets. Something, I don't know, it's nutty how much things were taped inside their cabinets. But anyway, but thank you very much. But that also allows me to say that we have a building an apartment above my garage and it's nearly done. And so we're gonna be ready to rent to somebody. So if any of you know someone who's interested in an apartment, it's a 1-bedroom apartment upstairs, so they gotta be ambulatory. Have them call me or somebody, somehow connect them to us, because we need to find somebody. Thanks.
I'm an old school teacher, I don't need a mic. Yeah, I've got happy bucks for 2 things. One is Luce's presentation earlier about the smile made me think of my life partner Lois, who I used to say when she got a little bit grumpy, honey, you can laugh or you can cry. It's your choice. What do you want to do? And that made me feel good that you even mentioned about smiling. And how many of you know Gordy Longhurst? Okay. Mike and Gordy and I were mushroom hunting a number of years ago, and we decided to give each other nicknames. Gordy was Signor Chantrelli after the chanterelle mushroom. And this guy was Don Morcelli after the morel mushroom. Is this Morcelli? I forget what the species name is.
Yeah, Esculenta.
Yeah, Morcelli Esculenta is this full name, but he's Don Morcelli, and I'm Don Porcini.
Do we have any else here? We do. Okay.
Well, everyone is, quite a few of you out here have the happy bucks for your travels if you're going, and so I guess I might as well donate also. I confirmed all my reservations to the RA National Convention in Melbourne, plus of course Australia, and 3 days in Fiji on the way home.
I have us and actually video looks for Tommy and the little thank you. Lots of energy needed for Tommy right now. She's doing okay, but she's got some complications that so she's in the hospital in Eugene. And for those of you that know Tommy Drake, so of course you all know her because she's our Rotarian. And anyway, so yes, she has some, if you want to know more about it, get a hold of me. And I hope you're watching outside because things are happening.
Remember a change in the weather. All right. There's nothing else. I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day and we will see you here next week.